And we certainly noticed this sense of belonging in the interactions that we had and the research that we undertook. And a couple of, again, examples there that I'll briefly touch on. Owen Eastwood, the author of Belonging, certainly a book I'd recommend anyone to engage with, speaks about this idea that our senses are primed to constantly seek information about belonging from our environment. And I think that the words of Owen and both Timothy Clark beneath sort of suggest this dynamic nature of belonging, that it can be considered to be temporal. And sort of referring back to some of the challenges we highlighted in the initial part of the session, often we can see culture as an exercise that's done, that it's introduced, that we've got a strong sense of belonging and we move on. The reality, and certainly from both the literature and the case studies we explored, is that belonging is temporal, and therefore consistently engaging belonging cues is really critical to ensure there's sort of that level of, as Timothy Clark describes there, renewed admittance to the group. There is a requirement for those repeated indications of acceptance. I think that's probably something that we can all reflect on, sort of our experience of either seeing or hopefully giving belonging cues. And then I think importantly around belonging, and we include a belonging graph in the paper that sort of includes the Venn diagram of diversity, equity, and inclusion, is this idea of culture fit versus culture contribution. And I think language is really critical when we talk to culture. And often we can find ourselves in organizations, and certainly I'm guilty of this at times, talking about culture fit, when in reality we're probably, and I think Daniel Coyle explains this brilliantly, talking about culture contribution. So when we're looking to recruit people, we're not necessarily looking for them to fit the culture, but we certainly want them to belong, and we want them to make a contribution. So I think language is really critical in that regard. And again, a couple of very brief case studies to highlight would be Selfridges. The top visual there had brilliant sort of time spent with a couple of individuals from Selfridges, Melissa and Julia, who spoke to sort of the culture that they were aspiring to create. And one of the initiatives that they introduced to brilliant effect was a diversity board that ensured representative views of the many people in the organization, to ensure that there was not just a sense of belonging for employees, but a sense of belonging for the various customers and stakeholders that engage with Selfridges. And the below case study is of Athletic Club Bilbao, a football club that play in La Liga. The Liga is the top league in Spain. An incredible history, and interestingly would probably consider themselves to be a more exclusive than inclusive culture, in so much as they've restricted their recruitment of players to those individuals who are either born in the Basque Country or have relatives from the Basque Country. So essentially, in a global industry, which football is, they've restricted their talent pool to a population of close to, I think, sort of equating to Manchester, of about 3 million people. And unbelievably, and Anthony Bombin talks in the paper to this, a former head of technical development at Athletic Club, around how that sense of belonging really unites them and really drives the success they've achieved. They, alongside two Spanish giants, Real Madrid and Barcelona, have never been relegated from the Liga. And indeed, Athletic Club Bilbao also won another trophy this season, which sort of underlies their success and the importance of belonging in their environment.